Hello, everybody. Welcome to our next chat with the leader. Hope you find this discussion engaging because I'm super excited to welcome Mr. Piyush Jha. He's the Vice President, Head of Strategy and Technology at GlobalLogic and responsible for the APAC area. And in his role, Piyush has this critical responsibility of helping their customers imagine, reimagine, and execute what is next for them. And hence, it makes it for an absolutely amazing discussion to understand what does customer centricity mean to Piyush and to GlobalLogic and for the industry. Welcome, Piyush. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sukanya, for the welcome. Always look forward to such interactions because, these get your creative juices running, which is exactly, going to serve, how do we do next?
Absolutely. Tell me, Piyush, in the last few years, probably 5 years too or so, we've been hearing about customer centricity so often. While I'm sure the industry was always customer centric, this term has become so center stage. I want to understand, has the concept evolved or is it a new concept altogether or how is it different now than probably a decade before?
I think we are, the concept has always been there. The motivation to do the same has always been there. It's just that we are dealing with over-pampered customers today with extremely evolved taste buds, right? So, if it was okay to be wrong 3 times out of 10 and be right 7 times out of 10 and still score high points, it is not okay anymore. If you think about our own personal experiences, it was just a couple of years ago okay to tell somebody that your delivery will be at your doorstep tomorrow or on 27th of the month. And everybody was very wowed by the fact that, you could predict when your packet will be with you. Today, it's not great anymore. Companies need to evolve and tell our customers that it will reach you between 9 a.m. To 11 a.m. or between 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Because otherwise people will be busy. They'll not be around anymore, right? So, and I bet you'd not even be able to recall when it was okay. It was okay just 2 years ago. Till 2 years ago, we did not have the wherewithal to be able to track a packet in an hourly mode and be able to tell our customers, right? Today, we are talking about facts that every packet should have a chip and we should be able to track it real time and be able to intimate customers about a 30-minute delay. So, the concept has always been there. We were always filling up cards, talking about our experience across various parameters. It's just that we are dealing with extremely evolved taste buds today. Everybody is getting since there are organizations that would pamper your customer any day, so you better do the same, or else you just risk losing the customer completely.
Got it. So essentially, customers keep asking for more, and if they don't, and you are not proactively providing it, then someone else will, and hence you might as well think ahead of the curve.
Yep, and I would rather flip that statement. I would say that, it's not the customers who ask. Great products actually are many times just ideas that we impose onto our customers and habituate them to that, right? iPad, when it was not a necessity, when it came, we introduced the customers to a new concept and had the customer like it. So it's not that the customers are demanding anymore. The pace of change is something the industry is getting the customers used to, and then the customer thinks that it is really obvious to demand it.
Great point. Now, one of the most critical things, Piyush, to understanding any customer is going to be to able to use the data you have. I mean, companies have data across. There are multiple touch points. There are multiple, points where data and insights get collected. Tell me, what are some of the challenges companies face in being able to get all this data together and then harvest it and to create like a 360 view?
I would break that problem down into three different areas. One being sources of data uh, are really disparate. They come from different sources. There are systems existing in the since the past 20 years, and you have to utilize the data that is there. So you need to make a sense of it, right? Number two, the forms of data. You get to operate on videos, images, text, phone calls, and a lot of different stuff, right? And each of these parameters is data to you. Till about an year ago, we would say that videos are videos, but videos are data. You are able to tag them. You are able to make sense of them with AI technologies that exist today, and you'll be able to operate on a video and be able to create a textual data out of textual information out of a video that is on display, right? The third is the size of data, which kind of has got to be enormous today. You need to be able to amass, operate on, and make sense of an enormous set of data. Take a simple
Correct.
example of a mall provider, right? So a mall provider would have in India a Shoppers Stop, a Pantaloons, a McDonald's, and a lot of different players operating within a mall. Now, if that provider is really to be able to use the data sensibly, which they can, and they're not doing today because there do not exist sufficient mechanisms to be able to do that. But imagine the power if they were able to operate on all the data that all these different stores have, which we have already started researching on how to do that. Each of these sources would have their data in different systems. You'll possibly need to set up a data lake that starts accumulating all this data and starts treating them in a similar manner. And then you would operate on that data and produce information out of that data. And then you will be able to kind of predictively tell that there are about 20% of the customers who visit McDonald's after visiting Shoppers Stop. And thus, McDonald's would be able to predict their capacity or, serve their customers better if they already have this information.
Correct.
And, there are walk-in times of different customers around that, right? So the point is that it is really beautiful in terms of what this enabled data can give us, but to be able to sift through this enormous volume of data and this disparateness of data, I would say, coming in from really different sources, enterprise systems. Some of them would have an Oracle backend. Some of them would really, have a flat file or an Excel sheet they're operating on. Is a nightmare for technology, but is a gift, for any enabled enterprise.
Great. So you're saying the disparate systems and being able to make sense of the data and figure out how do we interpret this data, probably the biggest challenges that any organization would face. I know, in 2007-8, when I was working with a lot of Indian enterprises and helping them adopt IT, they were going into ERP just a few years back. And today, even ERP doesn't seem integrated enough if you're not integrating it into so many other systems that you have with collecting data from. Anyways, so tell me something, Piyush, I know customer expectations, tastes, and like you said, have been evolving, and some have been, evolved by the industry. Do you think the pace at which the change is happening has gone through any drastic changes during COVID, or has there been a shift in the pace? And if so, how does an organization adopt itself to this changing pace?
I think from a tech perspective, from a very narrow tech perspective, COVID has done a world of good. There was a stock of technologies, there was stock of innovation that was sitting on the tenterhooks, which this pandemic just pushed through. We have been working on to again work through some examples that we have seen in the last few years. We have been working on zero touch technologies for years now. We were working on systems where you would not need an ID card to open your doors in your office premises, but by the virtue of having an app on your phone, and that app engages with the lock on the door, you will actually be able to get the door open and walk in, because that moves the entire thing digital. You'd be able to switch on lights the moment somebody enters a room without touching the switch. But these technologies were not mainstream, as you say, and here COVID hits us, and suddenly these technologies become extremely mainstream. There are hospitality industry demands. There are hotels which want you to work on such locks that do not need touch, work on such lights that do not need touch. So the industrialization of innovation is something that this pandemic age has just pushed forward like anything. There will be a lot more stuff around doing more zero touch. There will be a lot faster adoption to more AI, ML, IoT based technologies. You'd keep seeing lesser footfalls in banks, keep seeing lesser usage of checkbooks or hand exchanged currency, and there'll be a lot more evolution around how do you deal with your financial systems. So I think there is a slew of technology reforms that was just waiting to get in, and this whole scenario has just fast tracked that. Since there was no option, it has come in. And now, even if there is an option, people realize and recognize that there are better ways, and these are good days to be in. So why go back?
And how does an organization prepare themselves internally to be able to anticipate changes? Of course, COVID was a little unanticipated, but given that we know that there are going to be disruptions that will probably now keep happening, I think it's not unimaginable for any of us. How does an organization prepare themselves for? What do they do to kind of anticipate changes that would happen in future?
I would say that the manner in which we built products would evolve. They have evolved over the last few years. We had already started putting customer at the center of the entire journey and operating around the customer, rather than thinking tech first and doing that. But that evolution will see a step up. So when you think of a product today, you would start thinking in lines of how do you use data better? How do you close the feedback loop faster? If we were operating around customer experience in terms of asking them when they were checking out of a retail store, you'd rather, when you're operating on an e-commerce app, you'd rather improve the experience on the go as it happens. If we were talking about surveys that were conducted 6 months after something had happened, we are talking about edge technologies, which would actually give you a real-time feedback on how the customer feels and behaves. If on your shopping app, there are backdrops that are happening all the time, right? If a customer just abandoned the cart and moved out, you would be able to message the customer then and there and resolve the pain point rather than doing it after the fact. So I think the manner in which we are making the products today and we will be making the products tomorrow will change. We will think more data oriented. We will think more around how do you make shorter or smaller feedback loops rather than longer feedback loops where you get feedback a couple of months or at least a few days after something has happened. We would think more around utilizing the ML on the edge technologies so that we start operating on the edge and start correcting anything that has gone. We're talking about, for example, consider the scenario of a hospital where there's a doctor who is prescribing medicines to a patient, right? And it's quite possible that the doctor missed something in the patient's history, or the patient misinforming the doctor about an allergy that the patient has. If you digitize the whole thing on the edge, you're already working on concepts where the doctor just talks to the patient and the prescription gets printed by itself, right? The doctor doesn't need to write and prescribe. By the virtue of the fact that what the doctor has said has already been converted voice to text and is a written information now, you will be able to operate on that information, cross-refer if there are any allergies that the patient had, and be able to alert the doctor that it's not come up yet, but this patient has this allergy and this medicine will not go down well with the system. So the power of being able to utilize the data on the run will dictate or will demonstrate a lot of how products will be done in future. And I think, in that regard, these will be great times.
I think you're painting a fabulous picture of the future. And I know from my experience of the last 1 year that it's not going to be that unrealistic. It is something that we will be able to get there, and we will be able to, and companies will find their way to get there. It's not that far-fetched. It's not so much of the Black Mirror concept part of it, right? So while this picture sounds interesting, change is always hard, no matter where it comes from and what it's motivated by. When a company is going through such kind of a transition, right, in terms of their processes, in terms of technologies, like, give me some insights of your experience. And I know you guys have helped so many companies go through this transformation. What are some of the best ways to approach this change? There's cultural change, there's process change, there's technology change, all of that, right? So just share some thoughts on what's the best way to go through this kind of a change.
I think at the base of it, it is a mindset shift. Fixed mindsets do not work anymore and will not work any further. From a tech perspective, if there is a technologist who wants to create an app without taking the user into account, that will not work anymore. So I think companies will need to invest more upfront in terms of both bandwidth and money into designing how the experiences would look like, and then work backwards on trying to implement those experiences. So there is a lot of change that has already come about in dealing with the experience in terms of how products look and feel. I think, even before the look and feel of the product will come facts like, how does your product make the customer feel? So that is a massive mindset shift that, many companies have already gone through. Some others are going through, but eventually everybody will, because any customer, any product that doesn't wow the customer will not work anymore. So I think that is a big shift in terms of how products will be designed. In terms of the tech horsepower, or when we talk about when we talk on a forum like this, many of our audience is actually the tech mass, right? From a tech horsepower perspective, I would think that technologists will need to get unmarried from whatever technologies they're working on, because these technologies will stay around for a couple of years and will disruptively give way to new technologies, and the old ones will be wiped away as if they never existed. So some platform technologies like Java and stuff like that stay there for the sake of their names. But if you look under the hood, everything else changes every couple of years. There will be a lot of micro trends, micro technologies that will take place for whatever existed before, right? So both in terms of tech and in terms of experience, the entire mindset from which the product makers and the tech powerhouse approaches this whole game will be different, is already turning out to be different, and people will have to do that. And from my experience, we already see most of our customers already adapting to that. They're very upbeat about picking up and taking this journey head on, and that is where companies like us are able to provide a hand and be able to get the companies through these motions.
Got it. I think there are experts who are thinking ahead, and such as yours, and people who are thinking through what next, like how you defined your role. And I think it's important to tap onto those resources and prepare yourself while you move forward. Piyush, can you give us some examples, and obviously without naming the orgs, but can you give us some examples of how you would have helped some of the companies understand their customers better or even differently, or bring in a perspective that was missing, and just some examples of how that journey was?
Yeah, I think a few of those examples would from a customer centricity perspective, we have been working on a concept which we internally call either a customer 360 degree or a single pane of glass, where you get all your information on a single pane of glass and are able to serve your customers better. So the person who sits at the front desk is more empowered, more enabled with all the data backing the person, so that the data and information is at fingertips on whenever the customer needs it. A couple of examples would be, we worked with a large edtech company, which was more into textbooks and publishing, and doing a lot of work offline, and we were encountered with a scenario where a lot of learning was going online. The tests that people take have started becoming adaptive. The courses that people do have started getting fine-tuned, attuned to what people would want to read. Your learning would be based on the pace at which you would want to learn, rather than a module that was dumped on you and you have to go across the whole module. We worked across getting the whole education system much more agile in terms of the student experience, the instructor experience, and being able to cross the same journey in a far lesser time frame than it would otherwise take. And today we are already seeing dividends of it, and we are seeing learners who are much more benefited with the approach. Now imagine if we are able to establish the power of a very large enterprise on this whole system. This would disrupt the whole education system, and that is what we are already seeing with a lot of players today, which will keep on seeing. Right. Another example that comes to mind is some of our work that we did with a pet care company, in which the systems were not really working extremely well with each other. And if there was an accident or an emergency with a pet, and there was a report written, and then you would go to the hospital, there would be an operation on the pet, and you'd get some recommendations across it, right? This whole process was extremely manual and complex. We currently are working on a transformation which simplifies the whole process. So, for example, you have called up the hospital, and you have started. Given the fact that your address is already there in the address book, and your journey start has already been noted, your arrival in the hospital can be very much prepared a lot before you enter, and at times those minutes would count for saving lives.
Yeah, of course.
So the entire experience is something that we are revamping or changing around and doing a lot better. Then there are some retail industry leaders whom we are working with in trying to enhance the entire customer experience around retail. Amalgamation of the physical and the digital is the new trend in retail. You would want to You want to enter a shop where you left in your app and be able to continue shopping from there. If you're stuck in a shop and are looking for help, you would expect the shop to already know that you're stuck and help you around. We are moving towards systems where you'll be able to pick up goods, put them on your shopping cart, pay through your Apple Pay device, and walk out without needing to stand in a queue. And we are working on all such experiences. So these are some experiences that come to mind, which we have enabled already. There are a lot more disruptive experiences that currently are in the kitchen and will be available in the next couple of years.
Let's hope so. We keep seeing these interesting, experiences and which just kind of take us by surprise. But like you said, within a year or so, it just becomes standard hygiene that we expect from everything else. So of course, Piyush, COVID brought in a lot of changes in the industry, a lot more remote, a lot more distributed. The need for person-to-person, face-to-face connectors definitely significantly reduced. Certain trends of customer behavior has changed. Do you think many of these trends are here to stay, or do you believe that certain expectations from the customer as well as changes that we've seen in the industry could be around remote work or so? Over a period of time, as we settle, good news is around the corner, we've got vaccines. So in maybe a year or so, when hopefully we are all vaccinated, do you believe that these trends are going to reverse? Or do you think some trends are here for good?
I think a lot of them are here to stay. Let's do a quick sampling of some industry sectors, right? Look at education. Kids are mostly learning online today. So, if a couple of years ago, I would kind of not give an iPad to my kid, who is like 10. Today, there is no option because that is the de facto mode of learning. With this comes a lot of help in form of very educational videos or very insightful aids that the kids get today. Now, of course, these kids will be back in their classrooms in about a few months' time. But then these aids that we have already provided them are not going anywhere. They are here to stay. So the learning, if learning was supposed to be more individualized in a few years' time, where you would encourage self-paced learning, or learning at a pace at which a kid wants to learn, or learning with the kind of gadget or material that the kid wants to do. That change has already been hastened. Instead of a few years, it has already taken place, and it is not going back anymore. So despite kids going to school, the world of education has changed for good in a lot of respects, in a lot of good respects, but has changed for good, right? Similarly, if you look at finance as a sector, we are not going back to doing a lot of checkbooks anymore. We will keep transacting online. Where there was a lot of fear around how secure my account is, how do I really give my money on an app, and should I be able to do that? To a time within 6 to 8 months or maybe in a year, where every vegetable vendor and a pan shop wala has a Paytm and you pay. And to my surprise, most of them don't even check whether their balance was credited with what I paid or not. If they see the transaction being made, they're good. So that sector has changed. We are not going back to physical checkbooks and a lot of note handling anymore. It is far more convenient. Who counts? When you pay 522 rupees, who counts whether you want to give a 600 rupee note and get back those 78 rupees or not? You just Paytm it, right? So that world has changed. Similarly, if you look at entertainment as another completely different vertical, we will go to theaters tomorrow, but OTT is here to stay.
Absolutely.
That experience is completely different. At times I might want to enjoy a movie and a popcorn in a theater, but there will be times when I would want to enjoy the same movie, or a very newly released movie, in the comfort of my home at 11 p.m. at night. And I do not want to go to a theater for that. So the world has changed there. It is there to stay. There's no way in which we are going back to a time when OTT stops airing and it is all theaters. And that has just democratized the whole industry. There will be far more actors, there will be far more content. The content will compete with each other. You'll not be waiting for movie releases for a few months before you get to start watching. That world is different. Similarly, retail. Uh, as soon as we walk into a shop today, we start feeling a void around what our apps enabled us to do. It's so easy to be able to shift through colors, designs, sizes, and I don't care which shop that product comes from. It is at my doorstep the very next day. Whereas, stores will always have a limitation around how much they can stack and, what do they do with that. So they will be forced to amalgamate the digital experience in store. They will be forced to allow you to be able to order on kiosk and collect it later tomorrow, or get it delivered at home. They will be forced to enable mechanisms through which you don't stand in large queues, because you will not stand in large queues. You would rather check out and order via your app. So I think across the industries, if you see, times will be better. We will have options and choices, but the change that has come about already is going nowhere.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you. Absolutely, Piyush. I mean, I have purchased, very expensive silk saris and stuff online, which was probably unimaginable for us to think. I mean, electronics, standard, those goods were something that we could think, but I think our confidence, our taste, and our patience level have kind of redefined how we are going to approach the world. Thank you, Piyush. Great conversation. I just completely love the examples that you've shared. Helps us think through and imagine the next for ourselves and for the world. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sukanya. Pleasure interacting. Thank you.